Hey, everybody, welcome to Hashtag Sports. No introductory countdown. Didn't expect that. Don't know who threw the introductory countdown on the
All
screen.
right, that's fine.
Thanks for joining Hashtag Sports, everybody. Normally, we talk trash to each other during the countdown or right before the countdown. It didn't happen. Welcome to Hashtag. I am joined by Ryan Lasel and Joe Sharp, who you can catch every Wednesday on Razor Sharp Picks, except for last week. My fault. Anyway, my fault. So let's start the stream off right. Celebrational.
Woo.
AFC East Division champions, Buffalo Bills. Let's get a little McDermott clap action. Let's go. Let's go. Joe, you called the game. Ryan, you were at the game, and you came home and showered before the show.
Oh, yeah, man.
So,
bring that core temperature back up.
Is that what it was?
Oh, yeah. It was cold out there,
I
man.
wasn't sure if you're trying to wash off the being amongst the pores of the non-divisional champs. You needed to wash all that away.
Man, it was a fun environment, as it always is, and it was the extra special clinching game. It was kind of from the moment you got to the parking lots. It was just kind of that electricity that you've had in December and January type of weather and games. And Paul, you got to experience that last year during the playoff game. You went and hung out. I mean, it's kind of palpable, in the air, and it was like that again tonight. Everybody was feeling it. Gone are the days where there's dread in the air when you show up to one Bills drive for a football game, and this one was a lot of fun, a lot of snowballs flying, and people hung in there as long as possible. But man, with that snow, I got wet, got cold, and it was time to pack it in and head home.
Well, and the Bills are the first team, as Garn calls out, the first team to clinch their division title this year, and that is true. Although Kansas City was the first to clinch a playoff spot. Now, listen, Joe, we're all waiting for the day, right? We're all waiting for the day. But with what you saw from the Bills tonight, is there anything that you see that made it feel like they're true AFC East Division champs, or did the rest of the division just fall on their face and basically give it to Buffalo on a silver platter?
Well, both, right? I mean, I was talking during the live play about Ryan and I. Ryan and I pretty much predicted this happening at the beginning of the season. We did our preseason predictions. We said we still were very confident in the Bills. However, I don't think Ryan or I would have said, oh, they're going to have this thing clinched by December 1st and be strolling along here. And I was saying during the stream, this is a good thing, but this could also be a bad thing. Since the realignment, there have been 3 or 4. Buffalo's the 4th team to clinch their division with 12 or less games. All the other 3 lost in the Super Bowl. So don't want to say it's going to happen again, but we still have work to do.
Can you do me a favor and just from the vernacular remove since the realignment? It makes you sound so old.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That. Yeah. So
you can just say since insert year of realignment. When was the league realigned, Joe?
2004, 2005. When Houston 2004? Became 2004. I think it was Houston. The Texans became a team.
Okay.
But it was over 20 years ago, so it doesn't matter or something like that, right?
Yeah, it just sounds like in the like you were really just saying in the early aughts, right? It's just something removed from the vernacular. Don't need it. So Amari Cooper playing in his 150th game today, and Amari Cooper credited with a pass to Josh Allen on a touchdown. Josh Allen only the 5th player to do it, to rush for a touchdown, throw for a touchdown, and receive a touchdown, because he gets credit for both the pass to Cooper as well as the lateral from Cooper on the touchdown. Ryan, you had mentioned something after the game, Amari Cooper's post-game interview. What was that about that play that he was asked about?
Yeah, Josh and Amari came to the podium together for their post-game press conference, and they asked Amari about that play, and he said, "Well, Josh was over there. I think he wanted the ball, so I just gave it to him." And he ran it in, and fun to mention, Paul. Not only was that a milestone game for him, that was his 700th reception of his career that he then turned into a passing touchdown at the same time as he caught his 700th pass in his career. So kudos to Amari and Josh. And it's fun to see for a guy like Amari Cooper, who, by all accounts, I mean, yeah, he forced his way out of Dallas. He kind of forced his way out of Cleveland, but he never did it in the way that we've seen other wide receivers do it, right? Like, he kind of quietly forced his way out of those teams.
Right.
And he's having a ton of fun, man. And I think he's doing a lot of good for the receiver room in Buffalo. You see those situations defensively where, teams line up man on man with him, and, Josh just kind of pumps the ball to him. Did that in the 2-minute drill at the end of the half, and it's just a different dynamic with him on the field. And that was a big move by Bean. And, hey, he likes playing here. Maybe there's an opportunity for him to stick around beyond this season.
Well, and, on top of it, right, like when you hear him in interviews, he is just as calm, cool, and collected as you could ever imagine, and I got a lot of joy when he talked about, winning the KC game. He's like, this is the first time I felt joy winning a football game in a long time. I was like, whoa, buddy. I just want to point out, Amari, you picked where you were going. Like, every time you've picked where you went. But welcome to Buffalo, right? And, you see a quiet stat day from a player like Amari at 3 targets for 12 yards, 3 receptions, 3 targets for 12 yards. Just not an effective day. But Josh Allen only threw for 148 yards, right? Like, this wasn't a game where you're looking at the receiving lines. And, my condolences to those who started Khalil Shakir or Amari Cooper. Dawson Knox looked hot for a minute, right? You got a little bit out of it. You got like 7 points out of Dawson Knox. You started Dawson Knox as a streamer on, the tight end position. But this just wasn't going to be a day where the receivers were going to put up big numbers. And Joe, the weather played a huge factor. Buffalo able to hold on to the football. San Francisco unable to hold on to the football. Yeah. Could we just settle it now that, just because the Bills are in Buffalo, they haven't played a game in this weather. Can't say that ball security is just, akin to playing in Buffalo. Like, we know how to do it here. Right. We don't, right? Like, that's not a thing, is it?
Well, yes and no. Like, it's not from game to game, but at the same time, Josh Allen talked about it with Jason Garrett pregame, just different things, different circumstances that you're kind of used to in Buffalo. Now, in his instance, he was talking about how to throw a ball. Make sure you throw a tight spiral in the wind, or else if you don't, that ball is going to go all over the place. There are certain ball drills that you can run in practice that San Fran might not be prepared for, but I don't know. I'm not at their practices. So, no, from a game-to-game standpoint, you can't prepare for what you're going to see or what you're going to be playing in. But at the same time, if you've played in bad weather before, maybe there's something that they're doing in practice differently, knowing what December football in Buffalo can be like compared to a team like San Francisco, who knows they're only going to play up here one time in 8 years, and they have to bounce between divisional matchups out west. They're not really too concerned about one game. If they win, obviously this year, this game mattered to them a lot more than they probably hoped it would. But yeah, I don't know what the practice looks like, but you can practice for certain things.
Yeah, and, speaking of practice, right, Matt Milano joining the team for, full week of practice, and tough game to, dust off the Matt Milano book off the bookshelf. Ryan, I joked with Joe that he was doing his best AJ Klein impression today out on the field. Like, this isn't anything to worry about, right? Like, at this point, these are just live snaps for Milano. Like, I didn't have a ton of great expectation. He historically is around average as far as a league run defender, so like going against San Francisco, I had very low expectations from Milano. I was just happy to see him make through the game and play a majority of snaps. Like, what do Bills fans really need to extract from what they saw out of Milano today?
Not a lot. I mean, to the fact that he's back, right, and the fact that he held up an entire football game without getting hurt again or without really coming up lame or anything like that. Like, he was fine. This was a good game to bring him back, I thought, because it was going to be a pretty straightforward offense that they were going to see from San Francisco. I mean, they were just going to run the ball, right at Buffalo the entire way. I mean, Jawan Jennings doesn't really scare you. George Kittle, for sure, he scares you, but he's not in this weather, right? And Brock Purdy without Trent Williams, I mean, the stats are out there. Like, he's not a good quarterback when Trent Williams is not on the field. So this was going to be a straight ahead downhill football game, and those are a good game to bring a guy like Milano back because you're not going to ask him to do anything fancy, right? Like he's not going to be running stride for stride with George Kittle down the field. He's not going to have to come on delayed blitzes, and he's not going to have to get caught up in, those blitz packages and stuff like that. So, I mean, it was fine. And then obvious passing downs when they went to their dime defense, he came off the field. And I thought that was the right way to ease him back in. I wouldn't bring too much into that game. I think it was just going to be one of those things like, let's just get him reps, build up his ability because we're going to need him next week, and we're going to need him the week after with LA and Detroit. So those are going to be games where he's going to have to be full go. And some of the stuff that we saw tonight, he's not going to be able to do it against LA and Detroit, or you are going to have to start maybe sounding the alarm on a guy that's over 30, back-to-back injuries, like hasn't played football in 14 months. Like there's a lot of questions where if he doesn't come out and start performing like the rust is coming off, then maybe we need to start asking those questions.
Right. Yeah, sure. And, you look at this game and, San Francisco walks away, 3 turnovers. They gave the ball up in the red zone. Debo coughs it up. Like guys that are typical ball security guys, it just wasn't their day. But the 49ers have won 3 of the 10 games that Trent Williams has missed. Like your season's going to go how it goes when you have a pivotal player that's out. The fact of the matter is Kyle Shanahan just can't seem to get out of his own way here. Ayuk holds out and Ayuk misses, right? Misses the rest of the season just a few weeks in, right? Gets a season-ending injury. And, I get it, right? Every good team has a season like that where the wheels just fall off the bus. But if you're the 49ers, like you were looking at Super Bowl or bust, like, at what point you're just like, man, I hope we make the playoffs. Like we've been there as fans, right? So I understand where 49ers fans could get frustrated, but like they were just never in this game. And this is a game where the matchup typically would have been, well, this matches up poorly for Buffalo, a really good interior running team. Buffalo's they let teams run the football on them. They hope teams run the football on them because it seems to shorten the clock. Joe, it just seems week after week, Buffalo is happy to just allow teams to run the football on them. And again, like we've seen the offense go and take 7, 8 minutes, 9 minutes on a drive. Like at what point, right? And the weird thing is that they're doing that and still scoring, 30 plus points, right? Like it's a weird dynamic. The amount of times that they score per drive is astronomical this season. And Ryan had mentioned it before we started. That might be because they're getting more turnovers than everybody else in the league.
Yeah. Well, they're getting more turnovers, and something that's very important is that Josh Allen's staying upright, right? And so when they need to pass the ball on third down or whatever, again, no sacks today. You give Josh Allen time, he's going to find people open. So he's going to keep drives alive. And, we saw, like you mentioned, Dawson Knox, a couple of big catches, right? Only 2 catches, both of them big chunk catches on, I think one of them at least was on a big third down. So, if
Joe, you could have run those routes, man. You could have run those routes.
Well, not in the snow. But still, at the same time, if you give Josh Allen time, it doesn't matter who's out there. You had Virgil out there, and he would have been making catches all day. And so I think that's a very important statistic. And when you have a quarterback like Josh Allen who can run, who can create with his feet and create time for who can catch the ball and just get a touchdown.
Yeah.
It just creates scoring opportunities. I never thought that they'd get over 30 points in this game. By the way, the first half kind of played out. But yet here we are. By the second half, they're able to put some big plays together and get them in the red zone and get the touchdowns when we need them. And that's a big part of it too, is converting red zone to touchdowns, right? Like Buffalo's been doing a good job all season converting red zone opportunities into touchdowns. We saw San Fran get in the red zone, get in a scoring position a couple times in the first half and come away with 1 field goal, 2 missed field goals. You can't do that. You just can't do that, and the Buffalo Bills took advantage.
Yeah, and the Bills, 10 total drives, 372 yards in blustery conditions. Obviously, a vast majority of that on the ground. James Cook walks away. It was actually the second time in his career that he had 100 yards at halftime. He had exactly 100 yards going into halftime. Finishes 14 carries for 107. But that's because they got other backs in the mix. Ray Davis walks away 11 carries for 63 yards. Ty Johnson, 5 carries for 28 yards. The Josh Hand injury, let's just put it on the table and talk about it real quick. It kind of happened early in the game. Josh was holding his hand. It was damn cold out there, but we know that Josh has had a problem with that hand since the beginning of the season. He's been on the injury report pretty consistently, although I don't believe he's been on the last 2 injury reports with the hand. I think it has not been on there. But, anytime you see your quarterback grasping at his hand, cold weather or not, scares the hell out of you. Ryan, for you, did anything cross your mind when you saw Josh kind of favoring that hand? The Bills went off of that with a couple toss plays, which I got to be honest with you, they don't do that much, right? So that was sort of a warning sign to me, like, this might not be good if we're pulling out toss plays, because I think Buffalo's run like 8 of them all season. But what kind of sounded the alarm for you when Josh started favoring that hand?
Yeah, I mean, Josh said after the game it was his funny bone that got hit. So I don't know if it was one of those, he whacked his elbow and it kind of, reverberated through. But I mean, he's had an issue with that hand, right? Like they haven't come out and said it, but we're fairly confident, all the injury experts out there are fairly confident that he maybe broke his hand in that Arizona game where he went up and over. And Paul, you said it, like, it's cold, right? And it's cold, and anyone who's played football, that it hits different when you get hit and it's cold out, right? And a helmet hits a hand, and the hand is up against a shoulder pad because he's carrying the football. Like, that hurts, man. And if you've already got a fracture in your hand, it's going to hurt more. And the fact that he hasn't missed a play as a result of it, the fact that he continues to wear the glove, it's his non-throwing hand. Like, this isn't stuff to worry about, because now if this was Ken Dorsey, an offense, right, where they were asking him to run the ball 100 times in a season or 120 times in a season, that's ball security, all those things that come into play. But I'm not worried about it because of the way Joe Brady's handling him from a perspective of not taking risks with his body. And it's worth monitoring as we go forward, but until there seems to be some type of decline in play as a result, or something where, he tucks it with his left and the ball comes out, like, those are things to worry about, but that hasn't happened yet. So it's not anything that I'm concerned with at this point.
Well, Mario and I talked about it in the car last week. If you haven't seen it, Mario and I got back in the car, so there's a few episodes up there. Had some technical difficulties, as in we lost like 2 whole episodes that we recorded that were great. They're gone. In any case, we talked about whether or not Babbage or Brady become head coach candidates, because obviously, right, you clinch the AFC East, any sort of playoff team, coordinators often become candidates that teams want to talk to. There's going to be a bunch of head coaching vacancies. We've already seen coaches fired inside the season, so there's going to be a lot of movement there. But we did, obviously, since it was just Mario and I in the car, we don't know where you guys sit with that. So why don't we talk, Joe, if you had to put Babbage or Brady as head coach candidates, which of the two do you think teams would covet to want to talk to for one of those vacancies that's bound to be there?
I picked one of the two. I would probably have to say Babbage, right? Because you just look at all that the defense lost this past year. And again, this is a rebuild year, guys. Remember, this is a rebuild. And still able to put together. I know I saw that episode, and Mario talked a little about his lineage as well with Bobby Babbage. And I think, for me personally, I would look at the defensive side of the ball. You've seen with Dable success with Josh Allen as the quarterback, not necessarily turn into head coach success as well. So I'm not sure if that would kind of make people a little gun shy to go with Joe Brady. But at the same time, I think what Babbage has done with this defense, struggled at times, but I think overall, again, defense wants teams to run against them or begging them to run against them, and still able to come away with wins like this. It feels pretty good. That's where I would go.
Yeah, Ryan, I respectfully disagree with Joe, because Babbage is
I was going to say
coordinator. So yeah,
I disagree with that too. I mean, I think Babbage deserves a ton of credit from a defensive perspective. I think the problem that Babich is going to have going forward is what we've seen from the offensive coordinators under guys like Andy Reid and Kyle Shanahan. Like, how much of that is McDermott? I think that's always going to be in the question, right? Like, he's running McDermott's defense. Is McDermott seizing play call opportunities, as the games get close and things like that? Like, all of those questions come into play, I think, with Babich. And, until he's done this for a couple of seasons, and I think the fact that Joe Brady's been an offensive coordinator in the NFL before, he's been there with Cam Newton, he's been there with Josh Allen, like, he's done this with quarterbacks like this. You could look at a team like, I don't know, Indianapolis and be like, hey, look what he did with Allen, look what he did with Cam Newton, wonder what he could do with Anthony Richardson. Like, those are the kinds of questions that I think some of the GMs and team presidents will have in the NFL. Especially because these quarterbacks on rookie deals to perform are so crucial. Do you think Chicago might wonder what he could do with a Caleb Williams and, DJ Moore and Keenan Allen? Like, that might be fun, right? After seeing what he's done with Josh Allen and a bunch of dudes this year, it might be cool to see him with Caleb Williams and some legit, quote unquote legit talent. I think there's a lot of opportunities that Brady will field because he's really taken Josh's game to another level since he took over at from an offensive perspective. And then the performances he's put in the last 2 weeks, it's been like, oh my God, like, this dude is closing the book on an MVP race in December, clinching his team trips to the playoffs, beating the Chiefs, like, check. Now win him an MVP and get to the Super Bowl. And yeah, I mean, I would be surprised if Joe Brady lasts after this season. Like, if he's back in Buffalo next year, I think it'll be a miracle for Bills fans.
Right. Well, and let's roll that back real quick, right? So we're talking about 5-time division champs, right? 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, right? So it's 5 seasons the Bills, 5 consecutive seasons the Bills have been AFC East champs. And we're talking 3 offensive coordinators during that time. Right? Like, when you pull back the veil on it, right? The answer is just, it's because you have a unicorn at quarterback, right?
But I mean,
look at what the offense was, and there's not a single player, a single skill position player from 2020 still.
Right.
There's
I mean, how many offensive coordinators did Tom Brady turn into head coaches, though, right? Like, they didn't work out. But he turned a bunch of them into head coaches. Like,
right.
how many guys did Peyton Manning turn into? I mean, Adam Gase got a job because he took Peyton Manning to a Super Bowl as an offensive coordinator, and he continued to get work for some reason, even though everyone knew he wasn't very good at it. Like, Nathaniel Hackett had opportunities because of what he did with Aaron Rodgers. Like, these dudes turn these guys into right, wrong, or indifferent. The only difference with Brady is he's done it with 2 different quarterbacks. And those types of quarterbacks are the new thing, right? Like, if I can find a dude who's toolsy, who's prototypical, who breaks the mold, quote, like, those are the guys that it's going to be like, hey, let's go get Brady, let's draft this kid, and let's see if we can turn him into anything, right? Like Cam Ward coming out. Maybe Brady can do something with Cam Ward, like if he goes to Dallas, like, that would be fun. And it would be interesting to see what they decide to do there. But I think Josh is going to get a lot of offensive coordinators head coaching duties if he continues to perform this well and doesn't get them fired first, like he did with Dorsey. So
today, Khalil Shakir walked away with a very un-Khalil Shakir type day. 7 targets, 4 receptions. I think we need to go back and check that, because I don't remember Shakir being targeted in any play that he didn't catch. So maybe I'm crazy.
They had the screen. They had the screen that was low and away to him. They had the scramble in the first drive, the scramble drill that he threw, and it got knocked away down the sideline. Those are 2 that I can think of that he was targeted, and they were, one was a bad throw by Josh, like he never had a shot at it, and the other one, again, Josh was rolling to his right, Shakir broke off, and Josh just waited a little bit too long. I think the defender recovered and knocked it away. But those are 2 that I know he didn't catch that he was targeted for sure. And then maybe there was an overthrow in there somewhere. Like, was he the target of the overthrow?
That's the one that I remember. There was an overthrow over the middle of the field. That's the one that I remember.
Yeah, that was one where it looked like he was open, I think, and Josh kind of did that, dropped his elbow and soared it.
Yeah.
But no, it wasn't anything catchable. Nothing catchable for Shakir that he dropped.
And pulling back and looking at the defense, right? Everyone thought DeMar had another interception. I don't know how he keeps finding the football, man. I understand he's the Bills' second leading tackler, right?
Yeah.
I get that. I have my reservations about that. I'm certainly not going to hide that, right? About why DeMar is the second leading tackler on the team. But with all of that being said, right, the communication between Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano is something that I think Bills fans have to watch over the next couple of weeks, and how that impacts the back end, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have Taylor Rapp and you have DeMar Hamlin. How does that level of communication between Bernard and Milano change what's going to happen to the back end of the defense? And how does that change to the defensive line? I don't think there's as much of an impact to the defensive line between their level of communication amongst the two of them. But let's not forget, that's still a work in progress. Just because Bernard's been on this team for a couple seasons, he hasn't played with Milano. Milano's been out, right?
Well,
So
and when they did,
relationship.
Yeah, and when they did play together, Milano had the green dot. So, and he also had two veteran safeties behind him that, took care of the secondary. And that's not the case, right?
Vastly different. Vastly different. Yeah,
14 months ago, this is a completely different defense than what Matt Milano had walked out of. So, it'll be interesting to see. Like, I agree, Paul, that dynamic. Do they go back to Dorian Williams and situational type of, what does that look like going forward too? Like, I find it difficult to believe that he's just going to walk off the field and they're going to be like, yeah, we're good, kid. Thanks, pat on the butt, like go back to the bench and you're never going to see defensive snaps again. I think they're going to find packages for Dorian Williams. I think they wanted to see what Milano had at this point, but it'll be fun to see against a team like LA or a team like Detroit where they're going to be run heavy, but they can also pass the ball. How much Dorian Williams gets in the game in those two linebacker sets. Do they bring a third linebacker? What type of versatility does that bring to Babbage that we haven't seen yet?
Well, and Joe, when you talk about the impact of Milano's return and playing next to Bernard, to me, I think the biggest impact could be the safety position, which kind of has been out on an island, right? DeMar and Rapp have kind of been left there to hang a little bit, which I think is one of the reasons why DeMar's your second leading tackler, right?
Yeah.
Is that Bernard's still learning how to control the defense. It's a lot to ask of a kid. With Milano's return, do you think you see you're a little bit more comfortable with Milano?
Paul's.
Yeah, Paul, you're breaking up a little bit there. So what was the question again?
Sorry. The question was, with Milano on the field, your coverage packages probably change a little bit, right? You're a bit more confident with Milano than you would be with Dorian Williams. You're kind of hiding Dorian Williams a little bit. So how does that impact DeMar Hamlin and Taylor Rapp?
Well, I think that, this defense, like you guys were mentioning, is a lot different than it was 2 years ago. I don't know how much effect it will have on them immediately. Like, again, I don't know how many snaps Milano is going to be playing, the next couple weeks, but hopefully by playoff time, we see progression by both Rapp and Hamlin. And listen, Rapp, I don't know what more Rapp needs right now. Rapp's playing out of his mind and making plays and just doing his own thing back there. So I'm really looking to see more so improvement from Hamlin and not so much from Rapp, right? And as the connection between Bernard and Milano gets better, I think that's only going to help Hamlin in the long run as well. And like you guys said, if we have different defensive formations, that overall could be a good thing, but that's something else that Hamlin's going to have to learn too. And so that might take some time as well. But overall, I think come playoff time, this defense is going to be, ready to go, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, and Dorian Williams has been a plus run defender this year, right? If there's anything he's done well, he's been a good run defender. So he's actually, I think, top 20 in PFF's ratings. If he's not top 20, he's like right on the fringe of top 20 in run defenders. And while you're like, well, Paul, there's 32 teams, that's being top 20 is not all that impressive. The fact of the matter is, right, most teams run minimum two linebacker sets. There are a lot of linebackers out there. So the fact that you've got Dorian Williams anywhere near the top 35 to me, it tells you, that he's made an impact, especially since Matt Milano is on average, just an average run defender across his NFL career.
Yeah, we're going to need Williams for that Detroit game, especially. That Detroit game, we're going to need Williams.
Well, and that's what Ryan was just mentioning, right? When you go against Detroit, maybe you do see Dorian Williams, a healthy dose of Dorian Williams, since he is, again, on average, the better run defender. Now, do I think Dorian Williams is going to get absolutely run over by David Montgomery? Yes. Yes, I do think that would happen. It's not something that, from a matchup standpoint, I'm looking forward to. But if you're Buffalo, how do you approach that? Because you're going to go against Kyren Williams, who is a lot to handle. And then you're going to go into a two-handed monster like, Gibbs and Montgomery. I don't think Dorian Williams matches up with Gibbs or Montgomery. Ryan, tell me if I'm wrong here, right? If we talk about Dorian Williams being a better run defender than Milano, I still don't love the matchup.
Yeah, the Lions are the team that you worry about the most if you're Buffalo, right? Like, everything Buffalo doesn't do great, the Lions do really well from a defensive standpoint. Like, they run the ball right up the middle. They can get to the edge. They can run screens. They have two running backs that can, absolutely take over a football game. And Buffalo doesn't defend those things very well in general. Now, can Buffalo do their typical on offense of just like, let's keep pace in the first half and let's see what Babbage can do defensively in the second half? We look at this game. Yeah, Christian McCaffrey went out, but Jordan Mason's no slouch, in the running game. And, they went, I think what they have, like 75 yards in the second half. I think San Francisco,
I think 78.
Chasing 21 points.
Garno Freck put it in the chat early on. I think it was Garn. I'll find it real quick. Yeah.
So they were chasing points, and
yards.
they managed 78 points in the second half, right? And you're chasing a three touchdown lead for keeping your hopes of any type of divisional or playoff hopes alive, right? Like, this was a have game for San Francisco, and Buffalo just shut them out in the second half. Can they do that against a team like Detroit? Chicago didn't do too bad against Detroit, right? Like, and Chicago's not the football team that Buffalo is. I think this Lions team can be had. The problem is, again, everything they do really well, Buffalo doesn't defend super well. And they don't really have a big physical linebacker who can take a guy like Montgomery. Then they have guys who over pursue in Dorian Williams and in Terrell Bernard, and those are guys that don't do well against Jahmyr Gibbs. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of match up against that team. But Buffalo's, if you're going to lose one game, like, that's the game that you can afford to lose, because I think Kansas City's going to drop a couple games here with the schedule that they've got left. They got some good teams on the schedule, so Buffalo's not super worried about that. The problem is behind you got Pittsburgh, and they're playing out of their minds right now too.
Well, and interestingly enough, right, when you take a look at the splits for Detroit, I've heard people say that Detroit, kind of falls off the table in the second half. The fact of the matter is they have 16 rushing touchdowns in the first half of games and only 4 in the second half, which, again, kind of goes against the narrative that they're a really strong running team, right? When you have 16 rushing touchdowns in the first half and only 4 in the second half. And as far as passing touchdowns go, Jared Goff has not thrown a touchdown in the first quarter of any game this year. Which I think is fascinating. He's got 11 in the second quarter, and then he has 13 in the second half of games. So again, odd splits, right? To not have a passing touchdown in the first quarter of a game that's peculiar. That's very peculiar, especially this late in the season. But they only have 4 rushing touchdowns the entire second half. That's something that lines up for Buffalo, right? Like, again, I understand they have 13 passing touchdowns, but the fact of the matter is, like, that's still not scary. As good a team as they are, that's still not scary. Now, the Rams are the next one on the docket. So what do the Rams do well that Buffalo needs to be concerned about? Because you didn't put anything on tape here for the Rams. Like, this game is gone. There is nothing that they can look at. There's not a single thing in this game that's going to be any use to the Rams. So, what is something that the Rams do well that Buffalo needs to be concerned about?
Well, they run the ball well, right? Like, Kyren Williams is a monster. 822 total yards or 822 rushing yards so far on the season. And then they've got 2 really, really good wide receivers. And they've got a quarterback who's been around the block, who knows how to win football games. I think the question is, I don't know how good LA is right now, right? Like how good of a football team are they? I know they won today, but I mean that wasn't really an impressive win, right? They beat the Saints 21-14. Like, okay, like they beat Derek Carr. Congratulations. And I don't think they have an impressive win on their slate, right? Like, say they beat San Francisco. How good does that win look now? I don't know. They beat the Vikings. How good does that win look now? I don't know. I mean, Vikings aren't very good right now. They beat the Seahawks, like Buffalo did too. So, then they open 3.5-point favorites. Buffalo does. So, essentially, with the home field advantage in LA, Buffalo's a 5-point favorite heading into this football game. If you can defend, if you can defend Puka and you can defend, you can keep Kyron Williams contained, like you're going to be okay against the Rams, because they don't have a good defense, and they haven't seen a quarterback like Josh this year. So it's a completely new world for them, I think.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say about, whatever you say great about Rams offense. And, Williams, I agree with you, is a beast. You'll have the same issue with the Rams, or the Rams will have the same issue with the Bills that San Fran just did. Second half, what's Williams going to be able to do? Because you might be playing from behind, and then you really make a team one-dimensional in that scenario, and that just leads to our safeties being able to play back a little bit more on Puka, and really maybe even have our front four attack Matthew Stafford. Because one thing you don't have to worry about Matthew Stafford is him trying to extend plays too much with his legs, right? Like he's a veteran guy. He knows when to throw a ball away, but I don't think you see him running with his legs too much and creating opportunities. So I don't know what the Rams, like Ryan said, you look at the Rams schedule up and down, you say, who have they beaten and who have they played? And yeah, I just don't know how they'll match up against the Buffalo Bills.
Well, and the Rams are a 4-1 as far as plays run while trailing versus leading. They've only run 113 total plays while with the lead this season. So, that's a team that just, again, they've found ways to win, and late in games, they've run over 400 plays while trailing. Like that. You're not going to have a winning record when you do things like that. So I agree that on the surface, the Rams look like probably a little bit more of a demanding target than they probably really are. They often aren't winning games, and then the games that they do win, they're able to just kind of pull it out. Buffalo Mafia news, guys. So can we acknowledge how insane it is that we held Kittle to 6 yards? Again, I think weather kind of makes a player like George Kittle, again, to me, right? I like Kittle a lot, but in the last 3 seasons, George Kittle has ultimately been a disappointment at the tight end position, as far as I'm concerned. When you look around the league and look at what that position can give you, I think Kittle kind of falls. There's tons of potential, right? But, people kind of blame the offense as, well, it's kind of gimmicky, so sometimes, Kittle gets game planned out. He's still a dynamic target. I'm not super impressed by that because, again, Buffalo's getting, putting pressure on Purdy. Kittle wasn't going to lose anybody today, so I'm not super impressed by that. Am I wrong for feeling that way, guys? Am I wrong for feeling like, okay, yeah, you held George Kittle at 6 yards. That's cool. I didn't really think he was going to have a major impact on the game anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kittle is a guy that does really, really well when Shanahan has time to decide that this is going to be a George Kittle game, right? If they're coming into a game and they know they're going to throw the ball and they don't have Ayuk and Samuel's banged up and Jennings is banged up and they're like, hey, we're going to make Kittle the focal point of our offense today. They do a really good job doing that. The problem with that is when you come into a snow game and the snow's blowing and you're like, well, we're just going to run Christian 30 times today. And then he gets hurt and you try to shift. And this is one of the things that I think Kyle Shanahan really struggles with just in general. He has trouble adjusting his offense mid-game. You see it with Mike McDaniel too. He's kind of the same way, right? They all come from the same tree, which makes sense to me. They just don't do in-game adjustments. So if they're like, hey, Kittle's not going to be really, involved today, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, Christian's down, we need Kittle to be involved. They can't do it. And I think that's an indictment of Shanahan in general. But I'm with you, Paul. Like, yeah, it's great that you held him to one catch, and it's great that you really did a really good job against Kelsey. Which, by the way, shout out to Josh Allen, who has one fewer receiving touchdown this season than Travis Kelsey does. But when I wasn't expecting Kittle to be a big part of this game, just the way that the kind of everything played out. But I agree that I don't take a lot from this other than the fact that they can do a good job of scheming guys out of games, but I think it was more Shanahan kind of decided that Kittle wasn't going to be impactful tonight.
Yeah, I do wonder what Kittle's impact would have been if McCaffrey doesn't go down. I think that does change the complete mindset of the offense. Going into the pregame, knowing that Brock Purdy was coming into this game just off a shoulder injury, like Brock Purdy never had a big arm anyway, and with the weather conditions, I was a little cautious of what's the underneath stuff going to look like. Like, he's only going to be throwing underneath stuff because that's what Purdy does anyway. So I would have been interested to see how Kittle did if McCaffrey would have stayed healthy, but that just didn't happen. And yeah, you see like not with Kittle. You see with Kittle, you see boom or bust, right? Like he has a game where he has 2 touchdowns, looks great, and then the next 3 games, you don't hear from him at all. And that's just the way Kittle performs, especially if you look at the games before Purdy came to be the quarterback. I mean, there was like a season and a half before Purdy was quarterback where Kittle was a ghost. So interesting to see what happened.
So we got to talk about this. Did you guys see this?
Incredible.
Sean McDermott's doing a post-game interview.
Just incredible.
And then Josh Allen interrupts him and makes him do snow angels. Can we talk about Josh Allen making Sean McDermott a
I want to
human?
see an angel, a
Right?
snow angel.
Like, he so
Come
often
on,
comes off like
snow angel, come
look
on.
at this, right? Let's do snow angels. How? Sean McDermott's not fun. Like, this makes Sean McDermott look like fun. He's not
Coach of
fun.
the year, snow angel with his guy. Hey, LA,
Oh, so
there
he's
you
got to
go.
put the
AFC
champ
East
hat on.
champions.
I
Snow
get it,
angel.
right? I get it. But Sean McDermott's not a fun guy. Like, kudos to Josh Allen for making Sean McDermott look like a good time. That's
Yeah, I mean, Josh is like Josh is like the golden retriever that turns everybody. It gets like a smile out of like the biggest asshole uncle that you have in your family, right? Like, he's just that he's infectious in the way he delivers it. But I think I've obviously been critical of McDermott. Like, I'm one of the more critical folks that you'll hear from who has a microphone in their face on a regular basis. Like, he has done a really good job of becoming kind of like the coach that people wished he was, like, throughout his time. Like, he never smiled. Like, he never like looked like he was having fun out there. Like, even when the Bills were just like mollywhopping New England, in the playoffs, like, he didn't look like he was having fun in that game, right? Like, he just looked like this was business as usual. He's clapping. He's still kind of got that look on his face. And this season, man, I mean, it just feels like there's something different with this team this season, right? Like, it's I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. I mean, we went through the drought teams. We watched New England, just be so dominant, and then you get to a season like this, and it's like you expected a step back. This was kind of like a rebuild without calling it year. You still thought they could win the division, but what does that really mean in the grand scheme of things? And now here you are, half a game out, really, of the 1 seed. You've clinched your division before you've played one of your divisional opponents, which is just wild to think about, right? Like, they haven't played New England yet, and they've already locked up the division. Like, that's crazy. That doesn't happen.
No.
You haven't even played half of your divisional games yet, and you've clinched the division. And now McDermott's smiling and doing snow angels. Like, what's going on right now? Because this isn't how this is supposed to look for Buffalo. And it's just kind of like there's this feeling of something's different this season, and I'm hoping it doesn't. I'm kind of waiting for that shoe to drop, because that's the kind of fan that I am, and the kind of person that I am in general. Like, I'm waiting for it to come because I've seen this story play out before, 13 seconds and all that. But something feels different this year, man, and I think that is indicative of feeling different. Like, he's doing snow angels with his quarterback, who's growing his hair out and who's engaged now, and who's like, he's becoming a real man, like, in front of our very own eyes. He's not like this big floppy puppy running around on the field all crazy with the ball out there, and he's like bringing everybody along in this ride with him, and it's fun to watch. Yeah, I mean, Tyler brought up a good point in the chat. Like, maybe it was Diggs. Like, maybe Diggs had this approach of, like, don't smile too much. Like, we're not done yet. Like, we've got unfinished business and yada, yada, yada. But, like, there's a way to do that without getting rid of the fun. And I think the fun has a lot to do with it. I mean, they scored 30 points in 9 games this year. Like, that's insane. Yeah. These things don't happen in the NFL. And I think McDermott is starting to embrace that, which is kind of cool, because if he's the last one that needs to embrace it, like, this team could be different.
Yeah.
So, Joe, I want to talk about the Chiefs just quickly, right? You look at the rest of their schedule. We've talked about the rest of the Bills' schedule already.
Yep.
You have, obviously, you got to go through the Rams. You get the Jets once more. You get the Patriots twice. You got the Lions still, right? That's the rest of the Bills' schedule. The Chiefs are going against the Chargers, Browns, Texans, and Steelers. I got to be honest with you. Jameis Winston, Browns, kind of fun. Right?
Yeah.
They're kind of fun. Which, if you had to pick remaining game schedules, you're taking Buffalo's all day over this, right? Like, I'm taking Buffalo's remaining schedule all day over this.
Yeah. I mean, you never want to, winning games in the NFL is hard. And that's not just something that especially people say because it sounds nice. Like, it's just hard to do. You talk about Cleveland. Cleveland has 3 wins. 1 against Pittsburgh, 1 against Baltimore. Like, that's nuts.
That's what I mean.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, they're losing to bad teams, and yet they get up and they play. And you can say, oh, the Pittsburgh game was because of snow, whatever you want. They still won that game. You still have to go play the game, and they won it. So you never want to say, a game's going to be easy. New England's going to be chomping at the bit to knock the Buffalo Bills down as much as they can, if they can. That being said, you look at the Bills' schedule and you say 1 loss, right? And maybe 1 loss. And something I said during the live stream earlier is, even though Ryan and I both picked the Bills to win this division, I think we all down the board picked the Bills to win this division still. I still feel like I underestimated this team, right? Just how good this team actually is. So I sit here and say, I mean, when the KC game started, you look at KC, San Fran, Rams, Detroit. And I say, if we go 3-1 in that stretch, that's a great job, right? That's a great job. And here we are. Now we just went 2-0 going into LA. Again, as we just talked about the LA game, you could see yourself win that game pretty easily. And then you go to that Detroit game and say, wow, could the Bills run the table? Because we have seen, they showed the stat today. The Bills, in January and December now, January at home are 10-1 or 11-1. And that's not just the home games. The road record in December and January since 2020 is pretty damn impressive too. So you take that all into account and you say, maybe this team runs the table. And yeah, if this team runs the table, there's no way, in my opinion, the Chiefs are going to Pittsburgh, beating the Steelers, going up against Houston, beating the Texans, going against the Chargers, going against Denver, who they barely beat. But at the same time, you say these things, and then you look at how the Chiefs are winning games, and it's just like, you think at some point the shoe has to drop, but it just hasn't. And, there's part of me that wonders if Andy Reid is still out there playing chess where everyone else is playing checkers. And we'll see. But yeah, if I'm a betting man, I take the Bills' schedule over the Chiefs' schedule. But we still remember the Chiefs do have a game in hand.
I think Andy Reid is still trying to play chess, but this year he has a checkers board in front of him, and it's tough to play chess when you don't have the pieces that you need. And it kind of feels like they're being held together by glue and spit this season. It feels so tenuous over there in Kansas City
and zebra stripes.
I mean, yeah, there's part of that too, right? Like what happens when this Chiefs team actually gets punched in the mouth? Because we saw it in Buffalo, right? They wilted when they got punched in the mouth this year, and they got some teams on their schedule coming up, man, that they're gonna hit them hard, and we're gonna see how they can respond, because Pittsburgh just put up 48 points. Yeah, it was against a bad Cincinnati defense, but I don't know how good the Kansas City defense is this year. And you get 48 hung on you. That's tough to come back from. So I agree with Joe. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. I would much rather have Buffalo's schedule. You get the Jets and then New England twice in the last 3 weeks. Like any team in a playoff push would root for that this year. I get Aaron Rodgers in Buffalo in January, and then I get Drake May and or Jacoby Brissett. Like, sign me up.
I think it's Tyrod Taylor. I don't think Rodgers is playing by week 15 or 16, whatever it is.
I mean, at that point, right? Why even play him?
I mean, they clinched it. They clinched a losing record today with their loss today. So
that's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well,
and Rodgers looked washed, like more so than he has in the past.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, big time. It's to me, like, I know everybody wants to chase the 1 seed, and as Bills fans, you want to chase the 1 seed because it's another chip over Kansas City, right? Mm-hmm. And then you get Kansas City at home, where you have the chance of getting Kansas City at home, right? And I think every Bills fan's dream is to take that game back, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you want that game back. In recent history, like the Texans playoff game, the first time they made the playoffs, and then Taiwan Jones matters, for one play of his NFL career, Taiwan Jones matters and, knocks the Bills out of the playoffs effectively, right? And there's certain games as Bills fans you want back. I think a lot of the older guys look at, you look at the Super Bowl against the Giants and you want that game back. You don't want the Cowboys ones back. But the Giants one, you're like, no, I want that one back. The Redskins game, you're like, nah, I want to run that one back. The Chiefs, AFC, the playoff game in Buffalo against the Chiefs last year, that's the game you want back. And taking the 1 seed feels like the chance to do that, because then you're setting up the opportunity to, like, hey, we might get a chance to do this again, and we're not going to let it happen again, So I think that's why there's so much fever around the 1 seed. Don't get me wrong, right? Like, having a 1 seed is normally a fast track to make it to your conference championship game, right? You got to win one game, get to the conference championship game, and then all bets are off from there. But you look down at the record, and I don't want fans to be upset if you don't end up with the 1 seed. If you don't end up with the 1 seed, you still could be the best team in the league. Right. It's still possible.
Yeah, and the AFC title game may still come through Buffalo, right? Like, we just talked about how good Kansas City is or isn't, and if you're Buffalo and I don't know, they win. I mean, does Kansas City want to see the Chargers, right? Like in the second week of the playoffs, or do they want to see Houston in their first matchup? Like, yeah, would it be nice to know that everything comes through Buffalo after what we just saw, what we saw against New England, right? A couple years ago? Like, who doesn't want to see that, right? And for Bills fans, like, we talk about what happens to the city of Buffalo if they, win a Super Bowl. Like, is there going to be anything standing if they beat the Chiefs in Buffalo to go to the Super Bowl, right? Like, is the city going to be left to celebrate the Super Bowl that comes after that? Like, everything this year feels like they're exercising demons this year, right? Like, they're slaying dragons. They beat Kansas City in the regular season for the third straight year. They're 9-2 heading into their last 2 tough games of the year. They've clinched before December essentially. It's just kind of, again, this team feels different. And if you top it with a 1 seed for the first time in, I don't know, when's the last time they were the 1 seed? Back during the Super Bowl run, right? Like, back during 4 straight.
Early 90s.
And that meant nothing back then. I mean, the 1 seed didn't mean as much as it does now, because you're the only team that gets a bye, right? You're the only team that gets a break now, and they reseed and, like, all of those things. So yeah, I mean, it would be really nice. I'm with Garn. I'd love to sit starters. But man, it would be nice to know that everything's coming through Buffalo in the playoffs, because this is a tough place to play, man. I mean, this team is really, really good at home. They're way better at home than they are on the road. And add in the crowd, add in the elements. Like, it's tough to say that you don't want it to come through Buffalo.
Yeah, and today definitely felt like playoff football, right? Like, from an atmosphere standpoint, it had to have felt like playoff football. There was a ton of snow on the ground. It snowed the whole game. I'm sure pregame was this exact same way, as far as just it being cold and You know, you're going against a 49er team that, you know, just played in the Super Bowl. Like, this team is a legitimate threat. Downside was
and the 49ers needed this game today. Like, the 49ers
they had to have it.
Game.
Yeah, and that's what they looked like in a game they had to have. And again, you take McCaffrey out early, right? And of course, the entire tenor of the game changes. But the fact of the matter is, if you look at the Bills' early drives, yeah, they went 3 and out on their first drive. Then it was touchdown, 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 punt, touchdown, punt, touchdown, missed field goal. Like, they only gave the ball away 3 times. There were only, I think, 4 drives in total that they didn't score a touchdown. Like, that's madness. That is madness. That is not giving it. That's not allowing the opponent to breathe in a game. When if you get the football, you're going to score a touchdown, and that's the way Buffalo was today. They looked in their element playing like this, and we don't get to see this type of Buffalo team get dirty in the run game. We don't see this. It was fun to watch. And again, I don't know if it was the elements that made the run game as successful today as it was, or if maybe Buffalo could do this if they wanted to and impose their will onto a team. I would love to see it. I mean, we go back to talking about those Patriot teams that we were just talking about that had the 20-year dynasty. And there were some games Brady would go out and throw for 350, and other games he'd go out and throw for 112, right? Because they would just dominate the run game. Can Buffalo repeat this in conditions that aren't that? Like, I would love to know that. I think we've seen them at times really struggle to run the football, but it also seems really like apparent when they're going to run the football. Today, they were just going to run the football. It was clear they weren't going to have a ton of success throwing the football. So, Ryan, do you think Buffalo is capable of churning out the run game like that in conditions that aren't like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's encouraging for us is we saw how different this team can be doing the same thing, right? Like, let's go back to the first quarter, their first touchdown drive. 13 plays, 7 minutes and 38 seconds, 70 yards, and it was, by and large, it was all running the ball, right? Like, it was Ty Johnson, 18 for 18 yards. For 4 yards. It was Ray Davis for 13 yards. They had one pass, I think, that got completed. No, there was 2. So there was the Quentin Morris pass, and then there was the Shakir pass that came like right after that. But other than that, they just ran the ball, and it was like, I turned around because I've got a bunch of friends in the stadium that sit with me that we've been season ticket holders forever. I turned around, I was like, this is how you're going to win this football game, right? Like, you're just going to grind out 13 play drives, 7 minutes and 38 seconds come off the clock. Like, you're going to, maximize possessions, yada, yada. And then the next time they touch the football, there's James Cook for 65 yards in 10 seconds, and you're up 14-3. And it's like, okay, well, that works too, and, you're running the football, and it's like, that's the 2 different types of dichotomy that Brady brings, right? Like, yeah, let's grind this one out. And it's like, hey, I like this play call, let's call it, and then he just goes 65 yards down the field. Like, those are the types of runs that you didn't expect in a game like this. And you put it on turf or you put it on a clear field, and, it probably takes 8 seconds to get to the end zone instead of 10. So I was encouraged to see that type of approach to the game where it's like, yeah, we can grind it out, we can score quick, we can do whatever we want to do. And to your point, Paul, like, they were imposing their will. Like, Spencer German reached out to me, who covers the Browns for Sports Illustrated, and he's like, the 49ers from the second the ball was kicked off, they wanted no part of this football game. Like, you just immediately imposed your will on them and made them want absolutely zero part of anything to do with that football game today. And that's how you have to approach playoff football. And I think they did a great job of that tonight.
Yeah, and also you have to think about, when you think about the Buffalo Bills running attack, there are multiple, as Nick comes in and says 1, 2, 3-headed monster. No, there's a 4-headed monster, because you got, even if the running game's not working for you, you got a guy at quarterback who can kind of create a running game and make it work for you. I mean, we are one of 3 teams, I believe, maybe 4 teams, but one of 3 or 4 teams that have 2 players in the top 20 is rushing touchdowns in the league right now. And so we're creating running lanes, we're creating a running attack multiple different ways. And it's just really tough to go into a game saying, this is how you stop the Buffalo Bills run attack. Because the moment you do that, Buffalo, Josh Allen in particular, could say, okay, that stuff's fine. We'll figure out a way. Look at the Kansas City game. We weren't running at all. But how did that game end? Josh Allen creating with his legs. That was a designed run play, and he just took off and said touchdown. So, I think that the Buffalo Bills can do this in any weather, and I think we hopefully will continue to see that come playoff time.
And let's give a big Sean McDermott clap up to Mitch Trubisky completing his first pass since September. 1 for 1 for 4 yards. 1 for 1 for 4 yards. Mitchie Biscuits on fire today in cleanup duty for San Francisco. His previous attempts he was 2 for 1 for 2 yards. So he's got 6 yards passing on the season, which is funny because Josh Allen has 7 yards receiving on the season on no targets. That might be one of my favorite stat lines for eternity is Josh Allen's 1 reception on no targets for 7 yards and a touchdown. That's so wonderful.
It's just so funny to hear them tell that story, right? Like Cooper's like, he was out there because he wanted the ball, and then they asked Josh about it after the game, and he's like, I ran over there because I threw a bad ball. I thought it was going to get tipped up. It got tipped up a little bit. I wanted to make sure it didn't get intercepted, and I just made eye contact with him. And he's a veteran, so he knew what to do. And I'm like, nobody knows what to do in those situations. Like that's not a thing. Like you two are just playing. You're having fun and you're playing playground ball out there, and that's cool to watch.
Yeah. I mean, and look at how far we've come from trading for Amari Cooper when we all got excited when the Bills traded for Nyheim Hines. Remember that? Like, how far we've gone.
Talking about the impact that Nyheim Hines would have on this football team. I remember that show.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember that. I sure do. And that jet ski had more of an impact on Nyheim Hines than Nyheim Hines had on the Bills. So, all right. So we've come to that time in the show. The Bills won. And as you guys know, when the Bills win, we roast. That is 3 minutes on the clock. It is all on the table for you. Put it in the chat, and we will go ahead and read it. So we'll start 3 minutes on the clock. Mario normally does this, so I'm gonna go ahead and start a timer. He's usually a bit more prepared for me than I am. Let's see here. Timer.
Paul's gonna mess up 3 minutes.
I know, right? Okay.
While you do that, Paul, a fun stat that I just saw on Twitter. So the Bills have 10 wins this season. 5 of those wins, half of their wins this year, have come by 21 or more points. That is insane.
Isn't that crazy? It's absurd, right? And that's like, it's funny because I look at a team like Pittsburgh, right? And Pittsburgh has only scored 30 points. Pittsburgh's only scored 28 points or more twice all season. And it's just like the Chiefs. The Chiefs have beaten only 2 teams by 13 or more points, right? Like you look at Buffalo, you look at everybody else, and it doesn't seem like a competition. It doesn't seem fair. And that's why, don't let the 1 seed be the judge of whether you're the best football team in the league or not. All right, so 3 minutes. Here we go. The clock has started, and here we go. It looks like Paul stole his hat from a Bob Marley impersonator. Fun fact about this hat: it is insulated. It's furry on the inside, so it's quite warm. And the office that I'm in, I know it doesn't look like where I've been. It's in the exact same room I've been in. Obviously, we've redecorated a little bit. Bob has made his return. Bob Ross. It's freezing cold. It's right up against the garage. It's freezing cold in this room. So the hat stays. Plus, Mario used to wear stupid hats all the time, and you guys liked it. So I didn't think it was going to be a problem.
He has the forehead for it, though. So
he sure. Yeah. Well, he used to wear those hats with the long strings on it. He kind of looked like a homeless Pippi Longstocking. Let's see. Ryan looks like an assistant manager at a Mighty Taco in Rochester.
I wish there was still a Mighty Taco in Rochester, man. I wish there was still a Mighty Taco in Rochester. There's not. They closed the one in Henrietta a few years back, but man, I wish.
Paul, if you're any good at clock or time management, I know a few teams, cough, cough, Chicago, that might need you. Let's not forget Buffalo, right? I didn't call a timeout to get a look at the defense before I started the clock. By the way, you know how pissed I was at McDermott before the half? calling a timeout with 12 seconds left. I was like,
can't take them with you. Can't take them with you.
Are you
Gotta
making
use them.
an excuse?
Gotta use them.
Listen, he used all 3 timeouts in the second half with 5 minutes to go. So
Joe got his headphones the same time a team clinched the division this early. Joe, I got to be honest, man. The headphones, we got to get you buds, my friend. We got to get you some earbuds.
These have the logo on the side. See, come on. The buds don't do that. No.
Let's see here. Oh, Paul has that signed mini helmet back here. It's actually an Ed Oliver mini helmet that we gave away on hashtag that nobody ever claimed. So here it sits.
Yeah. They realized how good Ed Oliver actually is, and that didn't want it.
Now we got this signed his rookie season at Legends and
I was
Stars at Batavia Downs. You were there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you were there. But that was the same year as the Trey White Goalie Academy helmet, wasn't it?
Yep.
Man, that was probably the coolest thing we've ever given away. Was we had a goalie helmet made up for the Trey White Goalie Academy, and then we got him to sign it at that event. That was probably the coolest thing we've ever given away on the channel. Let's see. According to the halftime show, only Paul could be disappointed that Josh Allen decided to be Josh Allen mid-third quarter today and received a pitch from Cooper for a TD. I did state on the halftime show that Josh has to not be Josh Allen in the third quarter and just get out of the game clean, and then that happens. Timer is up, but we got some to get to. Let's see here. Daniel Gary's Paul now buys his hats from the same Salvation Army store for the man who craves that homeless look. Yeah, I've taken a hint from Mario. It's the best places to buy. And, orange tags on Tuesday are 50% off. Evan Anderson, if you don't use it, they will expire. It's not a coupon, honey. Yeah. And Joe's doctors were happy. He didn't spike his blood pressure all game this time. Yeah, I'm sure, Joe, this was probably a bit of not a relaxing game.
I don't relax during
football games for years now.
Yeah,
There's never a relaxing game.
Mm-mm. But true story. So my wife, as you guys know, but the people in the chat might not. My wife's a physician's assistant, right? And for years now, she's been saying she's going to get the things to tie me up in or whatever, so that way she can see my heart rate as the game's going on. I was like, that's a bad idea. You'll get broken machinery all day. But yeah, my wife and my own mother were like, yeah, you should get blood pressure things and check. I was like, no, not a good idea. So we'll see. Maybe one day I'll be on here. You'll see wires going random places. I'm like, don't worry about it, guys. It's fine.
Look, we got some positioning in the chat. Daniel Gary's. Can I trade my signed Levi Wallace mini helmet for the Ed Oliver one? Because we did get Levi Wallace to sign too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Daniel. We'll
trade.
Let's trade. Yeah, send it back. I'll send you the mini. That's no problem. Email me at htagsports@gmail.com or #sportsradio@gmail.com. Just email us, and we'll box this up and ship it out to you. That's absolutely not a problem. Let's do it. And Spin, I don't know how you could let the signed Goalie Academy helmet go. It was so cool, believe me. I wanted to keep it, but it went to a very good home, and it raised a ton of money for the Punt Foundation. So it's cool, right? It's super cool. It went to a good home. I know that. Jamie Osgood has that actually now, as how all that played out. So another big Bills fan, Jamie ended up with it down in Florida somewhere. He's got an incredible amount of signed helmets. It's like an obsession for him. He actually ended up with it. So. But that does it for time today. Boys, any final thoughts on the game?
Josh passed Kelly for the most total touchdowns in franchise history today, so shout out to that. And he got McDermott to do a snow angel, so that was pretty cool.
It was a one-arm snow angel, half effort. That's the clap he gets, right? Just it was a one-arm snow angel. I appreciate the thought, Sean. It was cute there for a minute.
Yeah, never happy, you guys. Never happy. You always gotta give McDermott a hard time. No, I get it. He can't do anything right. He's in the middle of an interview, gets stopped, and you're like, no. If you're gonna do a snow angel, you throw the mic at the person interviewing you and just do a snow angel. Yeah, no,
that's right. You gotta embrace it.
No, I mean, we're division champs, right? And then you have to be excited and happy about that. But we're at the point now, and I know Paul, you and Mario especially have talked about this before. Like, that's no longer the standard, right? Like 6-7 years ago, this was awesome. 2 years ago, we were popping champagne on this channel because we were just so excited. And it's still a great feeling. Division championships aren't easy to win, so we should enjoy it. But at the same time, there's so much more to be accomplished. You know, I would look at years past and say this Rams game might be a trap game because, you know, of this team being very excited to do what they did. But I'm looking at this Rams game now and saying, no, you have enough leadership in that locker room to say, we're not done. This isn't what we set out to do. And so now it's time to prove even more people wrong, because, you know, you see a lot on social media right now of people saying, oh, this was supposed to be rebuild year, yada, 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 how, you know, this is going to be, someone said on Fox that this is going to be the worst year for the Buffalo Bills in the last 5. Well, if the Bills lose the wild card round, it's still the worst year out of the last 5. So we're not done yet.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought to leave everybody with at almost 1 o'clock in the morning on a Monday. Thanks for that, Joe. Eastern Standard Time, of course. All right, that is our show, everybody. Thanks for joining #sports. Paul, Ryan. Wait. Let's see if I can do this correctly. Ryan. Hey, there you go. Joe down there. And thanks for joining. And we'll talk to everybody soon. Don't forget our sponsor, Mr. Rogers Homes, Arizona's #1 realtor. If you're looking for a home in Arizona, make sure you hit up Sean. If you're looking for investment opportunities in real estate, go talk to Sean at Valley of the Sun. Go hit up his YouTube channel as well. He's always posting real estate videos, so he's a lot of education on the channel. Mr. Rogers Homes on YouTube. Thanks again, everybody. Talk to you soon.
Go Bills.
Oh, yeah.